Welcome to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke, and today's guest is Ashleigh Golden. She is a psychic medium and spiritual teacher, and she's also known as the psychic time traveler. Her work involves teaching others about the soul relationships, and the importance of living in the now. In this episode, we'll explore how Ashleigh met her soul in another body and can now see her past, present, and future lives. Ashleigh, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Johnny. Thanks for having me on.
Psychic time traveler. We're going to have some fun with this one. All right, Good stuff. How did you find yourself on this path?
In the strangest way, I've always been a little bit psychic. I wouldn't have said that I was a psychic, though. I've always been on this really big quest of self-healing. I've had a lot of medical problems throughout my life, which can be linked to having more than one incarnation at the same time in the same physical timeline. So when I was on this quest to self-heal, I saw a psychic. I used to see psychics a lot, not so much anymore. I saw a psychic and she recommended that I get into music classes to help myself heal. I met a lady there and I started having visions about her. Didn't know her. I was just like, why am I having visions about this lady? It doesn't make any sense. And then I started having visions of some of my past lives. I went through something called the Dark Night of the Soul, which is the pinnacle of a spiritual awakening. The people call it ego death, people like Eckhart Tolle and stuff. Then my just psychic ability just exploded from there, and I met my higher self. That's who you really are. That's your soul. I met archangels and spirit guides, and from that point on, I've had about 80 or so visions of other lives, as I like to call them.
Okay, a lot to unpack there, but some very, very interesting stuff. So let's start with the spirit guides and the archangels, which is something we hear a lot about on the show. Who were or what were some of the archangels that you met?
Well, the first archangel I came across, I didn't even know existed. Everyone who goes through like a really big spiritual awakening always thinks, am I just going crazy? Am I just imagining this? Like, is this real? When I started to have the visions and the messages, and I would Google them because I didn't really know much about archangels, and they fit the description of what I was seeing or hearing, I was like, this can't be, there's something going on here. The first one I met was Archangel Ezekiel. I didn't even know he was an archangel. I knew about Michael, I knew about Raphael, and he introduced himself as Zeke.
Zeke.
Yeah, Zeke. And he was like sort of playful and a bit humorous and stuff. Like, we'll go into it a bit later, but when I say that I met myself in another body, it's actually, I wouldn't say a very common occurrence, but it's happened to a lot of people, but they've mislabeled it and haven't realized what's going on. So there is a phenomenon in the spiritual community known as twin flames. A lot of it is absolute BS, if you ask me. But some of it, people have actually met their twin flame. And what it is they've just met themselves in another body. So I looked up Archangel Ezekiel to see if he was a thing. In a description I saw of him in my head, what he looked like, which I can't actually remember in all honesty. It was such a long time ago, but I think he had light eyes and maybe curly blonde hair. And the description matched. He was known as one of the archangels of twin flames. I was like, oh, you've got to be joking. Because when all this sort of started happening to me, I was fixated on the twin flame thing. I knew it had something to do with that, but it's a lot more than what people think is going on. But yeah, I've met quite a few different archangels. And like I said, I think it's just a G up, and then I'll see their vision in my head, like Archangel Michael. He always comes across with a really sort of, I would say, triangular nose to me, like really pointed. Sort of a bit like, do you remember that Italian guy Fabio that was famous like in the 90s? He looks a bit like Fabio to me. Yeah, there'll be things that he does or says, and I'll Google it and it just all matches up. So yeah, I do have an interesting take on archangels. A lot of people really attach themselves to what archangels are and sort of, get really into it. Like, how people get really into crystals. And from what they've told me, they're like a spiritual triage team. It's funny how they show me. It was like, we've got this patient. Oh yeah, she's another spiritual awakening patient. Oh yeah, I'll assign her to you. We've got to help her out, blah, 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 blah. They're just like a help center. It's like going to like a nurse or a doctor or something. People like sort of hook into that sort of theory of angels and they're the be all and end all, but they're just like there to help you out. And they're amazing and I love them. But like some people sort of get obsessed with the notion
They
of
do.
angels. They're just supposed to be like a help team. They help you out when you're in a spiritual crisis or some sort of crisis, but you have enough power within yourself to sort of then go, okay, you've helped me out. You've given me a boost up. Just like if you're sick and you go to the doctor, you get a boost up and then you're on your merry way. But some people sort of cling to that notion that, oh, I've got to pray to my angels all the time. My angels will help me. My angels will save me. Yeah, they're awesome and they're helpful. They're wonderful, wonderful beings. But guess what? You are also a wonderful being. You also harness so much power within yourself to help your own self. And I think that's something that happens in the spiritual community that not many people realize, is that they come across something, they latch onto it, and just realize it's just sort of like a tool or an aid to help you, whereas all the power really lies within yourself and your own soul.
Very good explanation, and I really like the spiritual triage team.
Yeah.
Because they're there to help. So of your experiences, and you've obviously had quite a few,
Yeah.
which ones came first? Was it the spirit guide? Was it the past life visions? Or was it something else?
It was the past life visions. I'd actually had a couple of past life visions years earlier in dreams. I said earlier that I've always had a bit of a psychic ability. When I did have the psychic ability before I had the spiritual awakening in 2021, I would only have my visions really through dreams. They had to put me in a comatose state to have them. And when I Googled what was going on, like something, Edgar Casey, the famous psychic, he sort of went through a similar experience, that I would be like in a deep sleep, but also partially awake. It was like lucid dreaming. And it was through those experiences that I had a couple of past life memories when I was in this lucid sort of comatose state, that I knew what was going on, but I was so out of it, I couldn't move my body. So that came first. And then when I met myself in another body, met my soul, that's sort of, it's like Harry Potter, and Harry Potter has like a cloak of invisibility. Well, everybody has a cloak of soul amnesia, or a cloak of amnesia. We all set out to put that cloak on before we come to Earth. And my cloak sort of got lifted off when I sort of connected with my own soul energy in another body. And then like the visions started to come. So it was mainly the visions, followed by my higher self and angels. I like to call them soul guides rather than spirit guides. And the soul guides are just sort of our spiritual teachers. I'm a student at the moment. I know that my higher self is studying a double degree in the human condition. He's essentially at university.
Up there or down here?
No, up there. So I'm a carriage that my higher self plays. My higher self is actually studying to be a junior soul guide at the moment, which means that if he sort of passes through all this accreditation, as he tells me, then he'll have the ability to be other people's soul guides and train those people up. Well, when I say people, souls. And the other incarnations that you go through, like if you're an incarnation on Mars or wherever, that's the practical part of the learning. That's the being in the body is the actual physical embodiment of what you're learning. You can't learn it where we come from, source, in a physical capacity. This is the physical, practical part.
Which I've heard many, many times. But I've also heard that there is, in the spiritual realm, places for learning. I've had several people tell me that they even have jobs, but they're there to learn something. Like you just mentioned, there's only certain things you can learn while you're in the density, the flesh, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So going back to the past lives, which one or perhaps several that really stick out?
Yeah. The thing about past lives is, and the reason why I've remembered so many, is that everybody has stuff that they're holding on to from other lives that we shouldn't be. You should just be focusing on your own incarnation and your own life, but it just happens. The way that they explain it is that the reason why you sort of carry it with you, the other lives, the way I like to explain it is sort of like a simulation theory, that the higher self is an actor who is starring in multiple movies. Higher selves have names, and they don't have to be human names. They could be explanations of a human event. So my higher self came through as Johannes, but it's actually a joke. It's a play on the word yo-yo. He calls himself Yo-Yo for short because his incarnations have a tendency to be a bit up and down. And Earth is, I'm quoting Dolores Cannon here, Earth is a place where you learn how to manipulate energy. So what he's trying to do with me is trying to balance out that energy. That's where the yo-yo thing comes in. So yeah, we have characters that we play, or if you want to put it in a gaming perspective, our higher selves are gamers and we're little characters in different sort of games.
That's a very good analogy. It's also very similar to what I've heard about the in-between space, life between lives, where we are literally cast in a stage play or a movie, like you just mentioned. We agree to certain things that we all have to learn either for our own benefit or for the benefit of the group, like the soul group. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I would agree. That's what's going on. But the reason I'm bringing up this simulation theory is because what I've been shown is like, I'm not a gamer. My husband is, and I know a little bit about gaming. And, when you play games, sometimes your character takes on damage. Even like in Dungeons and Dragons, they have like little character profiles and they have like armor and weaponry. And basically what happens is that sometimes we take on that damage. So it could be sort of like emotional trauma or physical trauma or whatever from whatever life. And we carry that into other lives because it's imprinted into our cellular memory. Because we're multidimensional beings, we carry that energetic field with us. So the reason is that some incarnations from other lives are more closely linked to us than others. So we have specific lessons that we need to repeat. We wish we would have done it better. And we've been given a chance through our current incarnation to fix. So I would say out of the 80, the first maybe 3 I've seen are the closest to the lessons that Ashleigh, that's me, has to learn. And the first one that came through, who has come through the strongest, is somebody called Joseph. I won't say was, I'll say is, because time does not exist. Time is now. So even though Joseph lives in the 1800s, the 1800s is happening now. I just use the words past, present, future, because that's what we know. That's the terminology that we talk about. But Joseph lives in the 1800s. And he is very high up in the British Navy. And the reason why I'm so linked to him is that Joseph actually was really instrumental in the abolishment of slavery. Joseph is actually the only incarnation that I know of that I've been able to Google and look up. And he was really interesting the way he came through. I kept thinking to myself, what if I was the Earl of the place I live? I thought, this is the most bizarre thing. Why am I thinking this? At the same time, I was having visions of Joseph, this British Naval officer. And when 2018 was my first past life regression, that was of him. But then when I'd met this lady, my other self in another body, I started to have a lot more visions of him. Anyway, I was like, I wonder if I Google Earl of wherever I live, and a couple of people came up and I looked at them and I thought, nah, there's nothing there. And then I started to read their profiles and I was reading Joseph's and I just came across his wife's name, Grace. And when I read the word Grace, it just hit me. It hit me in my soul. It hit me just throughout my whole body. And I just knew that I was him and that Grace was my wife. And then when I sort of unlocked that, the visions about Joseph just absolutely exploded. So yeah, it's things like that that happen and you just think, wow.
Speaking of which, you had mentioned a moment ago that time is now.
Yep.
And the 1800s are happening now. This has been coming up quite a bit lately. I think it's a stretch, and I'm speaking for the skeptical people out there. You're saying that, let's say, 1812, for instance, that's happening right now.
Yeah, and I fully get your skepticism, and I love it. I think it's a good thing. In the realm that we live in.
I love the idea, but it sounds almost too good to be true because...
It does.
Because let's say I want to go back to 1985, for instance.
Yep.
And if I do that and I change something, then what happens to the timeline here in 2024? Or does it splinter off into another reality or another universe, which again, I don't know. I'm not an expert, but you can see where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. In our realm that we live in, people like to name them like dimensions, like 3D dimension, 5D dimension, blah, blah. I'm not too caught up in those labels. I just know that this is a dimension we live in. Yeah, in this dimension we live in, we're caught up in time. Obviously time exists in our dimension. It's everywhere. You know, we rely on clocks, we rely on calendars, you know, things like that.
We age.
Yeah, we age, yeah. But in the higher realms where we actually exist, because we're just fractals of a light being. So we have our higher self, which is whole, but they have fractals of themselves in their incarnations. We're a fractal of that soul energy. But when all that energy comes together as one, they're in that realm, in that dimension, whatever you want to call it, 5D, 11th dimension, I don't put a label on it. In that dimension, there is no such thing as time.
It's all happening at the same time?
Everything is happening at the same time simultaneously. Even parallel lives, there's something called concurrent lives, even simultaneous lives, everything's happening simultaneously. But I like to put the label of simultaneous lives on what I'm going through, which is you meet yourself in another body physically. Like I can't meet Joseph. I know that Joseph exists. I can research Joseph. He's the only one I can really research. I know that he was a definite thing. I know, even though I can't research the others, I know that they exist in other timelines, but I can't go and physically meet them. That's why I call them past lives or future lives, because I've had future lives.
Right, which we are going to get to. One of the things, before I forget, I wanted to ask, you've had lots of visions of past lives. Have you had visions or dreams where you notice that the people and the surroundings are very familiar, but Ashleigh has never been there? I'm going to add one more condition. It's not back in the 1800s or around the beginning of time. It looks like it's in current times. Have you had visions like that?
Yes. I'm going to give you an example of that. So that's concurrent lives. So I only happened upon what concurrent lives were this year, and it was after I reconnected with my other self, what people like to call twin flame. So when you do meet yourself in another body, what's the main rule of time travel? Don't meet yourself, isn't it? So
what would that be like?
Yeah, you're not supposed to be in constant contact with them, which is why the twin flame phenomenon is hilarious, because they think that they've got to attach themselves to this person and be with them forever. It can't happen that way. You're the same person. You're not supposed to know each other. The only reason they come into your life, the only reason that my higher self decided I need two versions of myself to meet is to push you along that path of spiritual progression. That's it. It's not for me and her to be best friends or lovers or whatever. It's just for the push. So I've had two incidences where I've been in contact with her. And after the second instance, I had more visions where I was introduced to the possibilities of concurrent lives. The way he put it to me was that originally, when all this happened, he showed me through like a microscope lens, and he really zoomed in, and I was just looking at the microcosm of things, not the macrocosm of things. He zoomed out and he said, it's much more than what you think is going on. So after I met up with her again and then sort of separated again, I started to have these visions of concurrent lives, and I hadn't had anything like that. And I've had a lot of weird and wonderful things happen to me, more than most people. It's exactly how you describe, which is what scared me. So I had a vision, and it was actually, I was in that sort of comatose state that I was awake, and just say it was the 14th of February, 2023 at 4:20 a.m., right? I was awake. I knew this was happening, and I was having this vision of me riding a bike in the hometown that I grew up in. So I was in my hometown. It was the same time. It was 4:24. It was almost like I was in my hometown, but I wasn't. I was in my bed 2 hours away. And all of a sudden I saw a bright light come towards me, and it came towards my physical eyes, not just in my mind's eye. And I had the thought, oh God, I'm about to die. And I'd been hit by some sort of vehicle and I died. Now, the strange thing about this life is I knew it was my hometown. It all seemed familiar. For some reason, I was riding a bike in the middle of the night in my hometown along the lake, but it wasn't my hometown. Like, there were little things that were off. What I was riding was not what we would call a bike. I knew it was a bike, but it looked different to our bikes. There was just little things that were just off, that I knew I wasn't the place that I come from, Newcastle. I couldn't travel to Newcastle. I couldn't get in the car and drive to Newcastle then, and it would be the same. And I wouldn't go there and find a boy that had died. So I was in the body of a boy that had been hit by a truck and died. I wouldn't read on the news about his death or anything about that, but I knew for certain. I felt myself die. Like, I felt it physically. I felt myself die. I knew that in another body, in that concurrent lifetime, I had died. So what a concurrent life is it's a life that is happening at the exact same time as now. So the concurrent timeline right now, so where I am, I'm in Australia and it's nearly 1 a.m. So there's lifetimes running right now, but it's in a different universe. We're a multiverse.
Different universe. So what's the difference, if any, between a concurrent life and a simultaneous life?
There's two ways you can look at simultaneous life. You could look at the word simultaneous as everything is happening at the same time. So the concurrent lives are happening at the same time. The parallel lives, past lives, future lives, that's all happening in my universe. So the difference between a simultaneous life and a concurrent life is that, yes, it's happening right now at the exact same time. But I definitely can't go a meeting because I died in that body. But just say before he died, I couldn't go and meet that guy, Daniel. I couldn't go to Newcastle and meet him. But I know right now that I can go to the top end of Queensland, which is the top of Australia, and go and meet myself in another body because that's a simultaneous incarnation of me. That's the lady I met. That's happening now.
That's in this universe.
That's in this universe. So the simultaneous incarnation is happening in your same physical timeline. There are other higher selves that decide to have more than one incarnation at the same time in the same physical timeline. You might have 3 other versions of you running around, but your higher self has decided for you not to meet because it's a big gamble. It's not been an easy journey for me. It's to teach you detachment from the ego, and it really is the hardest thing I've ever done. There could be 3 of you running around. There could be 1 of you in China. There could be 1 of you in Israel. There could be another 1 of you in the United States. And if you knew about them and you met them, you could go and physically meet them. That's what a simultaneous life is.
It would be interesting to go back in time or to a certain point in time and meet yourself, but I wouldn't really know quite how to respond to that. But at any rate, with the concurrent life, you're saying, like, if I have a dream about a place and people that immediately feel familiar, there's no question about it. But since it's concurrent, it's in another universe, which means I can't find this girl's phone number or where she lives or her email address. There's no way to do it.
No. And I would say to you and to your viewers, that if you are having dreams like that feel really real, it's not a dream. Your higher self or your soul, you're having that experience of being in that other universe. That's what you're doing. It's not just, oh, I'm having a dream. You're actually accessing that other dimension in that dream.
When we dream, oftentimes when we talk to empaths and intuitives, they'll say what you just said. You're not dreaming. You're actually in the astral, for instance, which means that you're out of your body, right? True or false?
True, yeah, because that's what we are. We're not bodies. Bodies are just the cars that our souls drive.
Yeah, I like that. That's actually my email signature where I quote John Lennon as saying, I don't believe in death. It's really just like going from one car to another.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
He was way ahead of his time. It's just like getting out of one car and getting into another. But going back to the astral travel, what you're telling me is that we all do that. So is viewing a concurrent life the same thing as astral travel, or is it astral travel on another level altogether?
I think it's astral travel on another level altogether. So I think that everyone is inherently psychic. That's what our true nature is. We're energy beings. We're light beings. We're not human beings. This is just, people like to call it a car or a meat suit or whatever. It's just a vase to hold our soul in to have this physical experience. If you look at it in terms of technology, our consciousness has basically been downloaded into a robot form. But instead of the robot being made of metal and whatever else, what we think a robot's made of.
It's more like a meat suit, right?
Exactly, yeah. Our robot's made of skin and muscle and veins and...
I hate that term, but...
Yeah, I hate that term too. It's a bit of a Scientology term.
It is, yeah, and I definitely don't like that. I'm not one for cults, but we notice pop culture, like Netflix. There's lots of shows that deal with that now. I was just watching Outlander. Outlander's so cool. I don't know when the books were published, but it was, it wasn't yesterday. These shows like Outlander, for example, going from like the 1940s to the late 1600s.
Yeah.
And it almost makes it seem like it's possible. But what you're telling me is if those times actually exist, that it is possible.
Now, here's where I think people get mixed up about time travel. So people think you have to go in a time machine to go back in time. Well, I tell you, I've visited lots and lots and lots of different timelines, and I'm not going in a time machine. You are the time machine.
We are.
We are the time machine. Not a physical thing like a TARDIS or whatever, or Bill and Ted's, whatever. What do they have, a phone booth or whatever? It's not a physical thing. You are the time machine. You're the physical thing. You are the physical thing. We aren't physical things. Our true self is not a physical thing. It's an energy body. It's an energy being. This is the physical thing that we've entered to go back into time.
This is the car we're driving right now. Eventually we want to get a Tesla or eventually we want to get vehicles like we saw in Back to the Future, where we're supposed to be flying around the sky.
Well, I've not seen it, but it could be existing right now in a different timeline. You know what I mean?
It could be. Now, since you brought it up, you've mentioned travel to the future.
Yep.
What does that look like?
Well, I've seen the future only in a few instances. One of the most interesting ones was that I saw myself in the future. I've also seen me as Ashleigh in the future, which is a pretty common psychic thing if you think about what psychics do and stuff. And I've also seen past versions of me, which I haven't thought about. I'll come across these visions of me that I haven't thought about since it happened, and I'll remember exactly what I was wearing and everything. But anyway, go to the future version of me. It's a bit of a double-edged sword, this ability, because it's not always the great. So I've seen that if I don't change my habits, I'm going to die of a heart attack at 67. I mentioned right at the start of this interview that I used to see psychics all the time and I don't see them anymore. My biggest advice to the whole world is don't waste your money on psychics. I don't do readings for people, and I never would, and I never charge people for any of my services to do with psychic ability. The reason why I would never see a psychic again is because, we are in a movie, but the movie can change. You're in charge of everything. You're the writer, you're the producer, you're the director. It's like one of those improvisation shows. Like one of my favorite TV shows is Curb Your Enthusiasm with Larry David. And if you know anything about that TV show, Larry David doesn't write a script. He writes an outline of a script of what should happen in that episode. The actors, they come up with the dialogue. That's what life is. So we have a general outline.
It's all an improv, really.
Yeah, it's all improv. Like we come up with like an outline of, okay, this is the movie of Ashleigh Golden. These are the things that have to happen. But it's just a very brief outline. You can change whatever you want. Going back to that soul amnesia, everyone thinks that they're their thoughts. Everyone has a little voice talking to them in their head. I don't mean about schizophrenic voices or you hear multiple voices. I'm talking about everyone has like a little but a little voice going in your head. Like even things like, oh, crap, I forgot to go and buy milk. You hear your own voice. You've got it in a dialogue. That's not really you. You are your soul. That's just the ego and the mind, which is a tool, which is fantastic. We need that. That tool is actually used to create the soul amnesia that I was talking about. So that's one way that we can sort of forget who we really are because we get engrossed in our thoughts. So the way I like to describe this is that basically your mind or ego, whatever you want to call it, is like that new technology that's come out, ChatGPT. So it will write scripts for you and stuff. And then if you focus your energy on those scripts, you will see that happen in real life. It will create itself in real life. That's the movie scene that will appear. Like it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's because that's the movie that you're writing with that script. So you can change the course of the movie though. Just because I've seen that I'm going to die at 67 doesn't mean it has to happen. I can change that. I've had that forewarning and it can change. Now, to talk about the interesting ones that people probably want to hear about, I'm glad you asked this because this is how I'll show that it links to your current incarnation. So I had a vision that it was in the 2070s. And again, this might not actually happen in the 2070s. This is just a version of the 2070s that I've seen, okay? And there was a massive tidal wave. It was interesting that I was with my brothers and sisters in this life and they were my brothers and sisters in that life, which doesn't always happen. I've seen multiple people in my soul tribe play all different roles. Like my husband has been my wife. He was my wife, Grace, Joseph's wife, Grace. He's been my wife as I was an American Indian who got shot in the shoulder, and I saw my father killed in front of me, and he was my wife in that life. He's also been my brother. So I was a a gay World War I soldier, a British World War I soldier, and he was my brother. You know, they play different characters. In this life, though, my brothers and sisters were playing the same characters, and my dad was playing the same character of my dad. I lived in Portugal in the 2070s, and in this tidal wave, I had lost my leg. So because I had lost my leg, I didn't think I was worthy of anyone. I thought I was ugly. And I was dating this boy that was clearly gay, and I knew he was gay, but I was too scared to say anything about it, and I just thought no one else will love me, and I'll never get another boyfriend because I'm so ugly. I might as well stick to this. You're probably thinking, what has this got to do with future? I'm going to tell you what this has to do with the future. So in this life as Ashleigh, my very first boyfriend was quite clearly secretly gay. So I'm repeating this life lesson in that life, and I'm making the same mistakes. So it's really funny to watch because the visions I have, I see it as a movie in my mind, and I'm looking at her and thinking, you're making the same mistake. You've already made this mistake in my life as Ashleigh. You're doing it again. You're doing it again. Dump this guy. You can do better. He needs to be with the men. That's what he wants, but that character, and her name is Andrea, she was just so caught up in, I'm so ugly, I'll never get a boyfriend again, no one will love me. So it's not anything super amazing that I've seen in the future. I saw my dad rebuilding the city that we lived in Portugal, and I saw the destruction from the tidal wave, which is not like the best future vision to have. It's not about, oh wow, look at all this technology and stuff. It's about the life lessons and how I was repeating them because I obviously didn't learn it in this life. My other future life is the same deal. So my other future life, I don't even know what year it is, but it's got to be pretty far in the future because it's in America, but all the cities in America have different names. There's a new language in America. And and I go through the twin flame thing again where I meet myself in another body. So I'm two girls about to go to college, so about 18. I'm a girl called Laura and I'm a girl called Mathilde. And the really interesting thing about that is that I experienced it really clearly, me being in two different bodies. Even like I saw a scene of Laura and Mathilde talking to each other, but I was experiencing it simultaneously. I was feeling and thinking everything Laura was, and I was feeling and thinking everything Mathilde was. And again, I've had that vision because that's repeating this life's lessons that my other self is a woman. And I fell in love with her. That's what happens. You fall in love with them so much when you meet yourself because you're supposed to love yourself the most. But it's to teach you, it's not to teach you, you should love yourself in another body more than you. You're supposed to love yourself in your own body the most. Laura and Mathilde sort of met each other and fell in love. And then this always happens because you're not supposed to meet yourself. You're not supposed to know yourself. It's just supposed to be a little spark to get that spiritual awakening push till moved to the other side of the country. So I knew that I maybe lived in Florida, right? We both lived in Florida, but wasn't called Florida. I don't know what the hell it was called. I don't know what the language is, right? And Mathilde, she got into college in Los Angeles, but it wasn't called Los Angeles, but I knew it was Los Angeles.
This is very far in the future.
Yeah, very far in the future. I haven't told you anything exciting about the future, but again, it's linked to my life lessons. I could see that Mathilde was making mistakes. She was an incredible musician and incredible artist. She actually had invented some new instrument that was a cross between a harp and a drum. It was amazing. But she felt pressured by her father, who was my brother in this life. I remember seeing my dad, who is my brother, my little brother in this life, on the phone talking about money. And it was something to do with gold, and he was just focused on that, which I've seen him in other lives and in this life. In this life, he's fixated on money, and in other lives, he's fixated on money, and it's been his downfall. Laura's mum was my actual mum in this life too. So again, there's a soul relationship. So if you're ever wondering, will I meet my family again? You will meet them. I know it's sad when people leave you, like if your parents die, your siblings die, or whoever you love die, but you will definitely see them again. I can assure you of that.
Is that part of the soul family or the soul group?
Yeah, or soul tribe, or a main cast of sort of actors that keep appearing in the same movies that you're in, but they just have different roles. So yeah, in that movie, I was seeing that I was repeating what was happening here. Like, my other self has literally moved to the other side of Australia as well. And in that one, they'd moved to the other side of America. And I could see that incarnation of Matilde was making the mistake that other incarnations of myself have made, and not following their goals and doing things, being a people pleaser and doing things to please people. Like, she had no interest in being a lawyer, but her dad was a lawyer and she felt pressured to do it, but she was giving up what she really wanted to do and love. Like, you can see it playing out and you're thinking, oh no, you're making the same mistake again. Don't do that. Don't do that. It's really interesting. You mentioned that what if you could go back and change time, change your mistakes? Look, I've actually been tempted to do that. And that's one of the reasons that you don't, if you meet yourself in another body, you don't have much to do with them, because every time I talk to her, I can see her making mistakes or whatever. And I think, I could help her because I've had future visions of things and stuff. Like, the whole reason I got back in touch with my other self is that I hadn't spoke to her for 2 years, but there was 2 weeks there that I just dreamt every single night of her romantic soulmate. I could see him very clearly, what he looked like, his name, his interests. I never met the guy. I had completely cut her off. I had no contact with her for 2 years. I didn't know what was going on in her life. I was told very strongly by my higher self, you must contact this other version of yourself and tell her this. And I was like, nah. But he just wouldn't leave me alone. He kept pestering me through these dreams. So I did it. And I said, look, I don't know if you're going to believe this, but this is going on. That guy actually existed in her life. Same name, everything. I got everything right. There's no way I could have known this. And he was actually an ex-boyfriend. I even knew that there was a massive age gap, like things that I shouldn't know. I had nothing to do with her. I knew. But the problem is, I told her all this information, but she was still like, wow, I believe you 100%. There's no way that you could know this, right? But because this is classic me, she's a version of me, she was still going, oh, but I still don't know if he's my romantic soulmate. I was trying to force it upon her. I was like, you must do this. This is your romantic soulmate. I was too tempted to try and change the course of her life. You can't do that because it does do what you say. It does splinter off and it does create time loops and things like that. And that's why essentially when twin flames only have such little time to do with each other, it's because of that. It's to protect yourself because you've got to stay in your movie. I was getting too involved in her movie. I did a podcast where I was given a past life regression and I went back to a time in Slovenia. After I had that regression, and this happens a lot, I will have other visions of that life. In that life, I was a guy in the Middle Ages that also felt I was ugly, never had a girlfriend. And I thought maybe I could go back and change the course of his life. Maybe I could make things better, see that he is beautiful and could get a partner. But he came through and told me very clearly, he's lived his life. It's over. I can't change anything in that life because it'll have repercussions on every other life. And it's made me who I am. It's made all the incarnations who they are. You can't, as tempting as it is, you can't go back and change what had happened because it's the butterfly effect. It affects everything.
I'll leave our listeners with this, which is actually the name of the music track that they hear in every episode. It's called The Butterfly Effect. And I think you've got a lot to unpack here just with the future itself. We might have to do another installment.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there.
Yep.
For the time being, though, and Ashleigh, thanks for coming on to the show. Love what you've had to say about the past, present, the concurrent, and the future. In the meantime, how can our listeners find you online?
I have a couple of Facebook pages. Just search The Psychic Time Traveller. Traveller has 2 L's because Australians spell it with 2 L's. I've also got another Facebook page called The Real Truth About Twin Flames. So if you're on a twin flame journey, that will help you out.
You've been listening to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing. For more info, you can go to closertovenus.com as well as mindbodyspirit.fm. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.